I'd like to share with you a couple of tips when working on a Remington 700 that will definitely make your life easier. The first tip involves chasing the action threads with a pulley tap, quarter 28 remember, and this, when you're bedding the rifle, eliminates the problem of getting the screw halfway in and it's getting tight and now it's bound up in the receiver and we can't pull it down against our aluminum columns. So go ahead and chase both front and rear action screws with our tap. You can see the advantage now of the pulley tap having the longer shank on it is we can complete this operation while the trigger is still attached to the receiver. All right, there we go. The action is now prepped for bedding as far as the screws go. Don't forget to use plenty of release agent when you get ready to set that barreled action in the stock. This next tip that I'm going to share with you involves the removal of the trigger group and the bolt stop assembly. For many of you, this is a troublesome and tiring procedure. I'm going to share with you a neat little tip that will make this extremely simple and easy for you to do. Watch closely now as I show you in detail how to perform this operation. The first thing you want to do is put the safety in the on position. This allows us to drift the pin out that holds the bolt stop and trigger assembly to the receiver. With the safety in the on position, start on the bolt stop side with our drift punch. And drift that pin out. I like taking my index finger now and holding the sear in place and the bolt stop as I remove the punch. This keeps the parts and pieces from flying around the shop. Remove the torsion spring. This is a torsion spring that powers the bolt stop assembly. Take our punch, remove the bolt stop from the receiver, and now we're going to drift out the front pin. We can now easily remove the trigger group and remove the sear. If we're going to be doing any stoning or doing a trigger job, now's the time to do it. Clean up the entire trigger group. Remember, no lubes or magic love potions inside our trigger. And don't forget to use the Holland's Remington 700 trigger kit when you want to adjust that trigger down to 2 to 2.5 pounds. You'll notice that we have two pin lengths, a short and a long. The long pin always goes to the rear, the short pin always goes to the front. Our bolt stop pivots off of the longer pin located in the rear of the action. Now let's go ahead and reverse the procedure and I will show you the tip that all of you have been waiting for. Insert the trigger into the receiver. I like lining up the rear hole first and inserting my pin. Start it with a hammer and now we're going to use the short pin for the front. And if you look closely, we're using our index finger and our thumb to properly align the hole for that particular pin. Set the pin in place, take our hammer and tap it in place. Now we're going to use our drift punch and drive that just below flush with the slot that is cut out in the receiver for the bolt stop. This pin does not want to come in contact with the bolt stop and cause it to bind, so drive it 5 to 10 thousandths below this lower surface. Now let's drift in the rear pin. We want to drift it in to where it is slightly below the cutout as well, but we want to have a little portion of the pin sticking up that will help retain the bolt stop spring. This torsion spring has a little foot or claw on the back side, and that helps retain it in the trigger assembly. So we're going to take and insert that in behind the trigger housing on one side of the trigger plate, and then take your thumb and slide it over the pin, and we're going to use our index finger and our fingernail to hold the bolt stop spring down in place. Okay, this is the neat tip. Take your bolt stop now, slide it in the slot and over the top of the pin, taking our index punch and aligning those in place. Now if we look closely, we can see that the hole in the bolt stop is aligned with the pin in the trigger housing. Turn your receiver over, take your pin punch, tap the pin in place. Every now and then the bolt stop's going to move, so come around to that side and just align it with your punch. Turn it over and drift in the pin. We want to make sure that the pin is just flush or slightly above the bolt stop assembly. And now check the bolt stop function, making sure that the bolt stop works properly when we deploy the plunger. That's your tech tip of the day. I'm Daryl Holland with AGI.